We're going to go ahead and get started. If everybody would take a seat, please. Good evening, everyone. My name is Adrienne King, and it's my pleasure to serve as the Vice President for University Advancement here at Murray State University. On behalf of all of us at Murray State, I want to welcome you to our beautiful campus this evening. Before we get started with tonight's program, I'd like to recognize the Murray State University Alumni Association and our town and gown partners for helping to make this evening's programs possible. Let's give them a round of applause, please. Tonight, we have the honor of welcoming home one of our own, Murray State alumna Sue Darnell Ellis. Sue attended Murray State University, graduating with bachelor's degrees in mathematics and science in 1980. Sue herself has said, as I tell others all the time, Murray State University is an awesome school. You can't get a better education anywhere. And Sue, we couldn't agree more. Sue later earned her master's degree in teaching in 1984, along with multiple education certifications and her rank 1 in education administration in 1987. Sue began her professional career as a teacher working in Marshall County and Paducah Independent Schools in Kentucky. She was selected as NASA's Kentucky Teacher in Space Ambassador in 1985. After the Challenger disaster in 1986, she was recruited to Paducah Independent Schools and then later to the Kentucky Department of Education, where she directed the first state-based space science education program serving 2,500 teachers across the Commonwealth. It was during this time that she was recruited by NASA to reform their education programs nationwide. During her nearly 25-year career with NASA, she supported the implementation of national standards in science, math, and technology. She also coordinated curriculum development, bringing aerospace education into thousands of classrooms. Tonight, Sue is here to share her journey with us from when she started dreaming about space to working with NASA. Please help me in welcoming Sue Darnell Ellis.
Thank you, Adrienne. They say I'm hooked up. Can you hear me? Okay. So I don't have to worry about this one? No. Good. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. There's one medication that I'm on, and if I weren't on it, I'm sure I'd be bawling my eyes out, and you all wouldn't be able to understand anything that I'm saying, but it's calmed me down just enough that maybe will make some sense out of my career. See, I've already not done the first thing I was going to do, and I don't even have them up here. I was going to come out in the solar eclipse glasses. See my solar eclipse glasses? And my lanyards that I had to wear at NASA. We're here because of the solar eclipse, and we're here because of Murray State University and what it means to the region, including Hopkinsville, where we're going to have totality. And so many people are coming here for that. And so I'm here because Renee Deaton Pfister, Doctor, where is she? Where is Renee? Renee is the best math student that I ever had. She is now the Chief of Staff for Murray State University, and she is the reason that I'm here. Adrienne, who just introduced me, said to Steve Cobb, who I was in physics class with on campus in 1981, I believe, said, "Why didn't you ever introduce me to Sue?" Well, we have all these illustrious graduates. So today, when they took me to the engineering and physics facility, I walked straight up to Steve and I said, "You wouldn't have this facility or have the students to fill it if it weren't for the K-12 teachers." And that's the community that I represent. And so for all of us, if we didn't have our teachers, we wouldn't be here, none of us. And so I want to thank Renee for inviting me back. They asked me at the press conference today, what is so important about this eclipse? And I said, for me, it's Murray State University to come back and to share anything they ask me to do. I said, I'll do all of it. Whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. Because without Murray State University, all of the little mementos that you see here, all the things that have happened to me in my life would not have been possible. And a lot of you in this audience made those dreams happen. My dad is here, and his wife Judy, my stepmom, and they are so very important to me. My dad is the person who made me a scientist. My dad asked me in the 4th grade questions like, why do we build roads? In the 4th grade, kids don't care about why you build roads. But Daddy asked me questions my whole life that made me learn how to think critically and figure things out and come up with an answer. And so, Daddy, thank you so very much for making me a scientist. And in the back, we have Dr. Gary Boggess, who was the first person who recognized the science in me that I probably didn't recognize myself. I'm so touched that you're here, Dr. Boggess. I'm so touched. You do not know. Gary Boggess was judging the science fair in Marshall County when I had Paula Hill, and I hope she's out there watching. And he really liked my project. Miss Hill wasn't quite so sure. But Dr. Boggess thought it was really good. And Dr. Boggess said, why did you do this project? Well, because they're talking about acid rain, and I wanted to see if it was real. So I put paper out all across Calvert City, and I put it in distilled water, and then I measured the pH to see if we really had acid rain. And I used agar, and I put it in trash cans, and I put it all over the place to see what kinds of germs and things that would grow, and to find out about the pollution in the town where I grew up. It hadn't come out of a book. It hadn't come from a teacher. It hadn't come from a parent. And Gary Boggess knew that. It came right straight out of my brain, and I did it only because I was trying to think of something that was important to us in this nation, in this world, and he recognized that when I was in high school. I think I was either a sophomore or junior, I do not know, but that man has been a part of my life and encourager for me every step of the way. And I really cannot thank him and his wife Molly enough for the encouragement that they have given me all of these years. Now, along the way, there are other teachers. And so I was a pretty good student because my dad was like, B plus? Why isn't it an A? So I really, really worked hard to make all A's for Daddy. And then eventually I worked to all A's for myself. And it ended up paying off. There's no such thing as luck in any kind of a career, I don't think. It is hard work. And I have worked and worked and worked. And my mother, who I know is watching also, from a distance in Huntsville, Alabama tonight, she told me, she said, Sue Ellen, you've broken the candle off in the middle and you're burning it in 4 directions. You've got to slow down. Yeah. I was doing the Paducah Community Involvement Program, the poster that's right here at the time, and it was pretty much me. And 700 volunteers and a lot of hard hours of work, but together we created a project that touched 4 states and 105,000 visitors. So yeah, I broke it off in the middle. But while I was studying in school, I could tell you right now all of the teachers that I had. Mrs. Stice, Mrs. Addie Mae Draffin, I can just name all of them. I know, I paid attention. In the 9th grade, Ellis Moore. Say that for me, please. Ellis Moore had the spark, and she was teaching algebra. And for a student who could have done English or history or any subject that I chose, I decided that I wanted to be a math teacher because of Miss Ellis Moore. And I was really sad because she taught for 7 years, I think. 5. She was going to get her student loans forgiven at the end of that time, and she was finished with teaching. And I thought, oh, what a shame. She is such a good teacher. But she was bubbly and energetic. And I watched all of my teachers, all of my life, for the good and the bad. And Miss Paula Hill that I mentioned, she was hard. She was the hardest teacher I ever had. Sometimes I thought, she's just trying to make me have a B. You know what it ended up causing? It caused me to be a better me. She had the highest expectations, and I worked so hard. And if I didn't make it, I knew that I'd done my best. But thank you, Paula Hill. Frida Ross is sitting on the front row, and Mike Harrell is sitting on the front row. Would you please stand? They're both teachers that I had in Marshall County as well, and I want to thank them publicly. One of the things that I've had to do in my career is to write math and science, but you've got to be able to put it onto a piece of paper. And in doing that, I had to learn how to do it. I had to be able to describe, and I had to be able to take the history. Mike, I know more Kentucky history than most people ever could put in their thumbnail because he was such a good teacher that I remember it, even now. And so without these people, I want those of you who are students to think about as you're going through your daily work in school and studying, get to know the people and remember them because they begin to be your foundation for everything that you do. And I have gotten to do a lot of fun things. Trying to put this program together, I didn't even know myself how much I was going to try to describe for you all in the period of 1 hour. So I guess I need to write a book. I don't know. It's just too much. There's just so much here. Kay and Barry Travis were going to try to be here. They're both very influential in my life as well. They went to church with me, and Benny and Gay Deaton, Renee's parents, are here. And so my church foundation, and Mike went to church with me, was so important in my upbringing. All of those relationships and all of those people are extremely important to whatever you do. So what is it that I got to do? For those of you that don't know, in 1984, President Ronald Reagan said the first private citizen in space would be a teacher. And so I was very interested in that because in 1969, I was glued to the television when the men were walking on the moon. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. And at the end of my career, I can tell you that I've gotten to tell both of them thank you for inspiring me to go forth and do science and love science and be a scientist and then share that with the K-12 community because it has mostly been within the realm of K-12 community. Now I say mostly because I've done and worked on, planned, been a part of hundreds of teacher workshops. Right? Terry? We've done that at Western and at Murray, John. John Guyton and Terry Wilson and I worked together as colleagues as we were doing workshops with KSTA, with the universities, but then it went beyond that because then I began to write workshops and to train the NASA Aerospace Education Specialist. And there were 36 of them, and they worked in all 50 states, and we were training teachers in all 50 states. So how do you write a workshop when every state at that time was different. Their standards were different. Their curriculum was different. We figured out a way. I had the basis of what I needed, and we made it happen. And so all of the people that are the foundation helped build, and Kentucky became an example. 1984, President Reagan. 1985, 2 teachers from each state were chosen. Judy White, I hope she's watching, is the other teacher from Kentucky, and we represented Kentucky. It was surreal, just like tonight is surreal, to go to Washington, D.C. and represent the state where I was born and raised, and I've lived my whole life. January the 28th, 1986, some of you in this room don't remember it, but the Challenger exploded, killing all 7 on board, including Krista McAuliffe, who was the teacher chosen to go into space. It's probably been long enough now I can tell you that for me, I was officially blackballed. I found out at the same time that I was expecting my first child, who is Seth Michael Darnell, who's on the other side of those cameras, and that I was a finalist in the Teacher in Space program. But they couldn't kick me out, all they did for about 4 or 5 days, because they hadn't written the part about no pregnancies allowed. So I got back in the program, and the education director, Frank, didn't really want to hire any of the teachers in space, but he hired me. And I went to work for NASA Education. And much later, my direct boss, Larry, found in the cabinet 5 videotapes where my videotapes that we had done during the application and the competition process had never been distributed. So I know for certain that I really wasn't. But guess what? I have a son, a beautiful son. He's the only live birth that I had. And 3 grandchildren from that with my husband, Dennis, who is here with us tonight. He married me knowing that I worked for NASA. And he said, "Get your calendar out. How much time are you gone?" And I was about 100 days. He changes the story a little bit. But then I was gone 100 days, and together Seth and Dennis and I and his 3 children, Matt, Shannon, and Nathan, have 9 grandchildren, suddenly going on 12. We have 1 in the bun with Shannon, and we have another in the NICU, and he has a sister, and so we have 12 grandchildren in the area of Frankfort, Kentucky, where we currently live. And so I ended up with the best of all worlds. Blackballed or not, I was Kentucky's representative for the Teacher in Space program, NASA's ambassador. And so that's why I'm here. NASA asked us in 1985-86, if chosen for our states, would we represent them? Would we go and talk for them? Would we share with the public? Because one of NASA's major objectives is to help the public know and understand why we have NASA, what NASA is for, what NASA is doing. And I said to myself when we lost Krista, I want to do what Krista can't do. And so I took a 1.5 years off, leave of absence, family leave. Seth Michael was an infant, perfect timing, but I traveled all across the country, traveled 25,000 miles. I counted it, so that's a number, it's a real number, 25,000 miles. In my notes, I have 166 schools that I visited during that 1.5 years. And so I'm here now. Renee invited me. I made a vow to myself. I have my original application here. And I thought that I would read some of it. And so I think that what I will read from this is that it says, why? There were 10 questions. Why do you want to be the first private U.S. citizen in space? And so they titled this about dreaming. And this is what I wrote. I was 27 years old, the youngest teacher selected for the Teacher in Space program. And I wrote, "This opportunity is like an impossible dream." I remember as a small child, I watched the first landing on the moon. I remember John Glenn, Neil Armstrong, and the awe which their accomplishments inspired in me. To a child who was still not sure that the moon was not cheese, this feat made science, space, technology, and the moon real. I got to thank Neil Armstrong for being my inspiration. I got to thank Buzz Aldrin for being my inspiration. I had all of the best of all the worlds. In the final analysis, when this was written, it was still in the dreaming stage. We create our tomorrows by what we dream today. There's a plaque down here. I didn't buy that plaque. Carol Gallatin from Rocketdyne brought that to me, and she said, "Sue, I saw this in the store and I wanted to bring it to you because this is you, creating our tomorrows by dreaming today." And Steve has gotten to dream for Murray State University, Dr. Steve Cobb, Dean of the College of Science, and build the facility for sciences across the highway. Awesome. I grew up in Blackburn Hall, but that's what the future is going to get to do because we were dreamers and we got to make things happen. And so, as I began my education, I studied mathematics and science, working diligently before becoming a teacher, feeling I would be able to help in the education of our scientists of tomorrow. With this new opportunity, I feel I can teach on a nationwide scale, and I can hardly wait to return and share my unforgettable experiences. I want to help others to understand NASA, its achievements to date, and its goals. I cannot imagine a more unique teaching assignment and I'm excited about this challenge. I want desperately for our children to have the best possible education system. Before education can improve significantly, the public must energetically support the system. I want to bring NASA to the public's attention and to bring the vitally important teaching profession and its unending role in preparing our youth, our most valuable resource, into positive public regard. The Teacher in Space program will mean a future of positive and vigorous support for both education and space exploration. I was dreaming, but now, when they asked me to come back to Murray State, and I look at all the things that I've gotten to do, and in retrospect, look at what I wrote, all those dreams came true. If you can dream it, you can achieve it. And that's real. I'm living proof. This paper is the proof that I dreamt it, and this is the proof that I've done it. And a lot of it is because of all of you in this room. Each of you have a different tie to me in a different way. Buffy, I cannot believe she came. So I got a picture of one of my mathematics students and me and Miss Moore because it is a constant flow from one generation to another, passing on what we know and love. And then we pass it on to our children and to our children's children. So I'm at the point of teaching my grandchildren, and I have 12 of them. Murray State, as I was going through the memories, we brought a teacher resource center here, a NASA teacher resource center, and Susie Adams, who directed that for us, back in the day when it was still print publications, is here. Thank you, Susie, for coming. Wherever you are, thank you for coming. And the story about bringing that NASA Teacher Resource Center here, I shared this afternoon, I'm going to share it with you now. Because for every girl or boy in this room, when you think about the future, you want to be diligent and you want to be perseverant and you want to make things happen. You don't want to make excuses. So the Teacher Resource Center, I was in Frankfurt and I was at a function with then Governor Wallace Wilkinson. And Governor Wilkinson and I were talking about it, and I said, I'm trying to figure out a way for you to work with our students in Western Kentucky. Now, we had, at this Paducah Community Involvement Program in 1988, we had 19 school districts in westernmost Kentucky, and all of them were participating. And I'd like to have some kind of a news conference, press conference, and I brought in Fred Gregory. There's something from him down here. He's an astronaut. Flew 3 times, commanded and piloted, and then became the associate administrator at NASA. And I said, what do you think, Governor Wilkinson? Oh, let's do this. And if I can we go through the questions and check and see if I want to answer them or not? I said, sure, whatever. We sat and we planned it. We had 450 people, and I don't know what auditorium we were going to be in, but we had 450 people coming to Murray State University, students and parents from all around the 19 districts in Western Kentucky. And when that happened, I got a phone call. Oh, the governor can't be here today. Really? Well, let me tell you what. The governor and I planned this program together, and I'm not going to take no for an answer. If you want to put the governor on, and the governor can tell me, oh, I don't want to come talk to those 19 school districts, I'm going to say no to Western Kentucky and Murray State University, then I'll cancel it. But if the governor is not going to be able to tell me no, then I'm expecting him to come, because there are 450 people and all of Western Kentucky looking. What do you think happened? He came, and he came late, but that's okay. He came. We were all sitting waiting, and he came, and he walked in, and he said, I want you to meet Miss Persistence. And that was me. So there is a story for persistence and determination. And another story with the Paducah Community Involvement Program, I've never been shy about calling and asking for things. The worst thing people could say, we needed all kinds of donations, is no. So I called, I think it was called Luca Bond, and we were building Main Street USA in the 21st century. The home and office and school and industry and schools of the and hospital of the future, complete with silver streets. The Executive Inn let us paint the streets silver. So, I lost my train of thought. That's called a senior moment. We needed to build Main Street USA in the 21st century. We needed building materials. And we had 70 people on a planning committee. So, somebody said, why don't you call, it wasn't the CEO and it wasn't the director, but it was like the publicist for the company. And I said, okay, I'll call them. And they said, well, he's gone to another company. He's not at this company anymore. And I said, okay, well, can I speak to the CEO? So they let me talk to the CEO. And when I did, I said, we're trying to build Main Street USA in the 21st century. I need some help. This gentleman said, I have a whole truckload of Alucobond materials that's the wrong size for the order that was made, and I'll give it to you. $30,000 for a phone call. So when you have the bravery to ask, the worst they can tell you is no. So, Murray State and Marshall County and the teachers that taught me, they all gave me the strength and the determination and the willingness to forge ahead. So this big Paducah project, Frankfurt said, what are you guys doing in Western Kentucky? What are you doing? Well, you better talk to Sue. She's the one that's been putting it together. So they did. Well, could we do that statewide? Yes. Well, what would you do? Well, can you write that down? Can you write that down, Frida? I could write it down. And so I wrote it down. We need you to come to Frankfurt. That was a really, really big move. To move from Marshall County and Callaway County, where I'd been my whole life. That was a big move. But my husband, my first husband, and I made that move, and we moved to Frankfurt. And some of the things that Adrian was saying, we did the first space science statewide project in the nation. And then all the other states were calling and saying, how do you do this? And so I would share with them. And then all of this time, of course, I was knowing who the NASA education family was. And at a KSTA or an NSTA, National Science Teachers Association, some of those different meetings, I would bump into different people, and I got to know Dr. Eddie Anderson. He was a graduate of Kentucky State University. I was living in Frankfurt. And he was saying, what's all this reform stuff? Everybody's talking about reform. So 1990, the sun shines brighter. Kentucky education was reforming all of our school districts. And so I was able to describe, what would you do to the NASA programs? Can you write that down? I could write it down. And I wrote it down. And they said, you know, I went to Washington, and this was one day that I was absolutely floored. I was just completely in shock. We need you to come to Washington to do this. And I'm like, by this time I was a single mom, and my son was about 8, and they said, well, we can give you 24 hours. And I said, okay, that'll work. And I went back in the next day, and I said, I cannot believe I'm going to tell you this, but I'm going to tell you that I cannot take your offer. I am so sorry. I'm a single mom, and the most important thing in my life is to raise my son. And I can't do it in Washington, D.C. I know you're going to need me to travel. I know you're going to want me to go to all the states. You're going to want me to go to the conferences. I can't leave my son with somebody I don't know. I don't know anybody in Washington, D.C. That's really far away from my family. I just can't do it. Well, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need to make it work? So I needed an answer just like that. And I was like, so it came to me, was able to think on my feet pretty fast. And I was like, well, if I could work from my home, I can do whatever you want. Okay. Whoa. So in just a few short minutes, I suddenly became a NASA employee. Now, there's a little twist to that story, and the NASA employee, that part. So NASA told Oklahoma State University that they wanted them to hire me. So Oklahoma State University paid Jessamine County. Larry Allen, the superintendent there, helped make that happen and was extremely important in my career. And they paid me because I said, I'm not going to have 5 or 6 different retirement programs out there. If I can have one retirement program and you can make that happen, then I'll do it. So I did it. And at first it was 1-year trial, see what happens. And it ended up being 15 years where I worked with NASA. So when she said 25 years, we're counting from the beginning of the NASA Teacher in Space program to my retirement in 2007. 2007 kind of came as a surprise. 300 positions at NASA headquarters were closed. And so I told somebody at the press, if they ask me this question, I'm going to answer it, because it's been long enough to be away from NASA. pork barrel politics took the live people, including myself, away from NASA headquarters. And in place of that, there are concrete solar systems on campuses at universities because the senator or congressman wanted them there. And if there's anything that I could change about what goes on in our political system, it would be that. We tried very, very hard to put objectives and descriptors and gave scores to the different projects that the NASA money was going to be used for. But in the final analysis, it came down to what the senators and the congressmen and the NASA administrator and the boss up above, the president, said was going to happen. I live the Washington, D.C. life, and that's the one thing that I think should change. The pork barrel politics is just ruined NASA education for the kinds of things that I worked on. I had in my plan, see, God never lets you have your plan. My plan didn't work. I was going to get my Kentucky teacher retirement, and then I was going to go back to work, do the same job, but just be a NASA employee with the check coming from NASA, and rather instead of being on loan, because that's what I was. All those years I was on loan and worked directly for them. So I say that because I just think it's an important thing to say. I think it's an important thing for us to all know, and I think it's an important thing for us to try to get changed in the political scheme of things. So it was 1993, and I went to work for NASA. And in the writing that I told you, the first thing they asked me was, how would you reform our education programs? Their education programs, when I hit the scene, were the aerospace education specialist teaching about the solar system, teaching about the NASA missions, teaching about the details. And there was a guy in the back who had a little checklist. Did you give that fact? How many people were in the audience? Count everybody. How many programs did you do? And that's how the NASA programs are run. And so in Kentucky, we were dreaming big. We wanted to truly reform the education programs. We wanted to make it more student-centered. We wanted to make it more interdisciplinary. We wanted to do different kinds of assessments. NASA, the guys that I went to work for had no idea what those words meant. And that's what my job was to explain to them about the education reform programs that were going on nationwide in the different states. Every state was able to do their own plan. And so then I would write reform ideas. I wrote objectives. I wrote management priorities for elementary and secondary, for aerospace, for teacher enhancement, i.e. teacher workshops, for curriculum, for partnerships. I wrote implementation plans, and then we had to implement it, and then we had to review it, and then we had to write a strategic plan, and then we had to write visions for the future. And I got to do all of those things, but all of it was writing. So you had to know the content, and you had to know how to write. Let me just take a couple of seconds here and see what I don't want to forget, and then be thinking, because I'm going to let you ask me questions. Somebody asked me today, while I worked for NASA, what were the most fun things that I did? And I'll tell you about those two things. I'm going to read you a poem, and then I'm going to let you ask questions. I got to fly in the KC-135, which is lovingly called NASA's Vomit Comet. And I got to do, with an Eastern Kentucky school, a downlink with the space station, connect the space station to an Eastern Kentucky school. It was on the West Virginia, Kentucky border, as far as you can go. The students and the teachers were as excited to see WLEX equipment in their community as they were to talk to those astronauts who were out in space. So that was a really huge thing. Now on the vomit comment, I talked to Steve about this because NASA allows students from colleges and universities to put together projects and to suggest them and to fly them on the KC-135. So I was under the umbrella of Oklahoma State University, and we were flying. There were 4 of us, and we were going to fly our experiments. And so you have a week: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 9 a.m., 9 a.m., 9 a.m. 40 parabolas. So the plane flies. A parabola is a hill like that. 40 parabolas out toward the ocean. Big swing back, 40 more parabolas. They don't care if you get sick. They don't care if you turn green. You turn around, 10 more, and then 10 more going back for a total of 40. They pulled some of the students from some of the colleges and universities off of the KC-135 with a forklift. They were just green. I made it through the first 40, and we had lunch, and we went back in the afternoon. The very same day, not Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 9 a.m. lunch and 1 p.m. And I was like, guys, I really don't think I need to go on this. You know, I've been on the roller coaster. I got to do it. I don't think I really want to do this. Oh, you've got to do it. You're part of the team. We can't go without the whole team. Now, the colleges and universities, they had 4 sets of kids. So the kids took 1 set of parabolas, 4 kids. Another set of kids for the next parabolas. Another set of kids and another set of kids. Our group, supposed to go all 40, 80, 120, 106, all of them. Well, I had asked a lot of questions, and I had talked to several astronauts and said, what is it that I need to do to make sure that I try to survive this? Well, you need to write out 4 or 5 of the parabolas before you move. Well, very first parabola, the NASA photographer's right there. Let's see what you got, girl. I knew that I was supposed to sit still and write out those parabolas. But the photographer wanted me to show her what I got. What do you think I did? I started flying. And so I didn't get the orientation that I should have had by waiting out those parabolas. But I did make it in the afternoon, so I flew a total of 80. When I got to the hotel room that night, I laid down on the bed, and the room was just going in circles. And there was nothing. They knocked at the door. I can't go to dinner. You've got to go to dinner. You got to eat something. No, no dinner. Well, can we bring you something? I don't know. They brought me some toast, and they brought me some applesauce, I think, and I think I was able to eat it. So the next day, you have this list of everybody that's supposed to be there. So the manager's going through the list, and Sue Darnell, she's not here. Well, where is she? She's got to be here. She's not here. Well, she has to tell. She said she's not going to fly. She's got to tell me herself she's not going to fly. No, you don't understand. She is not here. So I didn't make it the second day. But my boss then, who had us, the AESP specialist, flying, he completely changed the rules because they had inserted those 2 flights in one day without us knowing, and suddenly hit us with, you fly 80 this day and you fly 80 that day. So the other 3 people on my team flew all 160, but I only made it 80, but I was thrilled to death that I got to do that. And so what I was doing during that process was to work for projects and experiments that Barbara Morgan, who was Krista's backup candidate, was going to do when she flew in space. And so with that, I did get some of the experiments tested, maybe not to the best of my ability or what it needed to be, but I did get worked through 2 days of it, through 40 and then 40 more parabolas. And they did not take me off with the forklift. I walked. I did. So I'm going to end, and then I'm going to let you answer questions. And I'm going to end with a poem that President Reagan read to us, the Teacher in Space finalist, in Washington, D.C., in June of 1985. And I want to dedicate this to all of the teachers, all of the parents who have been teachers, to all of the husbands who have been teachers, to all of you who've taught anybody in any way. You're all teachers in one way or another. Somebody's paying attention to what you're doing. This is the poem that President Reagan read to all of us in the White House, where we got to sit on the furniture and walk all over the first floor of the White House, and I felt just awesome with that opportunity. Teacher, you are the molders of their dreams, the gods who build or crush their young beliefs in right or wrong. You are the spark that sets aflame a poet's hand, or lights the flame in some great singer's song. You are the gods of the young, the very young. You are their idols, and by profession set apart. You are the guardians of a million dreams. Their every smile or frown can heal or pierce a heart. Yours are 100 lives, 1,000 lives. Yours is the pride in loving them and the sorrow too. Your patient work, your touch, you make the God of hope that fills their souls with dreams and makes those dreams come true. You all made my dreams come true, and I've been very happy to share that with you tonight. And I'd like to open it up for questions if anybody has a question. Anybody have a question? As I stand and look at you, oh, we have a question. Yay! And you didn't want to sit on the front row. I'm so glad you did.
Thank you. So you mentioned a lot of the people here may not remember the Challenger explosion. I do remember we had a snow day that day. We weren't in school. And I think as Reagan said in his comments, President Reagan, that space travel had become commonplace or taken for granted. I don't think I even realized that there was a launch that morning. I went out and got the afternoon paper and saw it on the front page, and of course started watching TV. You kind of skipped over where you were at and what you were experiencing on that day. Can you share that? If you can't, I understand.
I can share that. I skipped that because I didn't want to focus on any negative or sad things. I was at Kennedy Space Center. There are pictures that I took of the explosion that day. January 28, 1985 was the day that the Challenger exploded, but I had been in Florida for a week prior. My infant son, Seth, was 4 months old. I was nursing. He was staying with friends, and we got on the bus and we went out to Kennedy Space Center. We went to the VIP area, and I could have reached out and touched Krista's mom and dad and sister. They were right behind me. I remember thinking that I wish the press wouldn't have turned their cameras around on us in our sorrow. because we were looking with naked human eyes, no telescopic lenses, just our eyes, and they had those telescopic lenses focused in. Once they got the video of the accident, they immediately, I mean, they were everywhere, turned around on the crowd. And before I left that day, before I left Kennedy Space Center, I called Mr. Condor. I didn't mention Mr. Condor. Mr. Condor is the superintendent of Marshall County Schools, was the superintendent of Marshall County Schools, and very influential in my upbringing to become a teacher and then to do a lot of things in Marshall County Schools that I wouldn't have been able to do had he not asked me to do them. And I called him that day and I said, I need to do what Krista couldn't do. That was the day in my life, looking back in retrospect, that everything changed. I would never have been able to write the script to doing national projects that I brought to Paducah, and we did it with 19 districts in Western Kentucky and became the national model for the rest of the nation. Or to go to Frankfurt and to do the space science program that we did there, and the rest of the states wanted to know how we did it. And that all of that work then carried me to Washington, D.C. to do it in all 50 states and to make those opportunities and to make Kentucky and Murray State University, in some respects, a model for the rest of the nation. So I really, that day was very surreal. But it was a turning point in my life, and I would never, ever, have ever been able to write the script and know that when I made the decision to try to do what Krista couldn't do, that it would mean that I truly was going to get to do what Krista couldn't do, because I've worked at all 10 NASA centers and worked in education with wonderful people in all of the NASA centers, and I can't even begin to thank all the people that were there. But Larry Bilbrough and Frank Owens and Pam Mountjoy and John Hartsfield and Doris Grigsby and Steve Marks, they're people that none of you all know. But in my professional world, I have family everywhere, all across the nation, and here and in Frankfurt. And so that day, all of that explosion kind of exploded my life into doing things. And when I wrote the application, they said there was a sentence about describe your philosophy of teaching, and in the video it was describe your philosophy of living, and I said my philosophy of living is to serve God and mankind, and I've really tried to do that, and it's really sad for me to think about when that started and how that started, and that Krista is not with us. So that's why I really didn't touch on it, but I don't mind you asking that question at all. Anybody else? Yes. I've been given like a boundary. I'll try to stay in it for you guys. Yes.
Did you ever go to space camp or help out at space camp?
Yes, I did. And actually, this uniform over here was from space camp. When I flew in the KC-135, that was funny. We had a green Army jumpsuit and black boots. They were all made for men, but I found small enough ones, smaller than, that I would wear. And then like the face mask that we would wear was not small enough to make a tight suction that made me feel comfortable. But I mean, I'm back, I'm here. I went 4.5 minutes without oxygen. But yes, that came from space camp. I was there for a week. I went from that, maybe that's what's wrong with me. 4.5 minutes in the hyperbaric chamber without oxygen. They said, number eight, do you remember where you are, number 8? Yes. Well, could you find your car, number 8? No. Just lots of memories. But yes, space camp is worth whatever it costs to go. It's just a wonderful, wonderful experience. Yes, I got to go. I have made sure that a lot of teachers I call, I've lost count. They used to be my space babies, but lots and lots of teachers who got to go to space camp and do NASA workshops, and it just kind of ballooned, and I stayed in contact with them. And so I love Facebook, Dennis, because I get to be with my people on Facebook. I got to find out that John Guyton was going to come here for the eclipse, and John, can you come? I want to see you. I haven't seen you in so long. And then he brought Terry Wilson with him, and then Buffy found out about it, and she's one of my students. And I don't know how many of you all found out about this on Facebook, but anyway, there's not all bad. Who else? Anybody else? Well, we have 8:30, and I want to thank you very much for having me here, Renee. I think I see President Davies in the back. Thank you so much. This is home. It was home and hard studying for 11 years. I've had so many people try to bring me back, get me to be here, get me to teach here. I'm here. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to be back, and I thank you so much for this invitation. And Adrian, I appreciate it. Yes, sir. Well, beyond that, I have no idea if my brother and sister are able to be online, but my brother Lynn and my sister Cindy and Dean Cobb and myself were all in the College of Engineering Physics all at the same time. And so now the facility is beautiful. Lynn and Cindy are both engineers in Huntsville, Alabama, and I've worked with NASA. And so from all three of us, from Jim Williams, his three kids, all went through Murray State, we thank you. We thank you for being a part of our lives.
If you guys haven't had a chance to come up and check out these amazing artifacts that Sue has brought with us, I encourage you to do that. Sue has agreed to stick around for a little bit if you want to ask questions. Thank you all for coming this evening. We really appreciate it.